Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about episode 5 of Connect. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, obviously we were picking up where the last episode left off with Jin Seop having Z, and he's leaving a message to... for Dong-soo of, hey, you want him to survive, you're going to have to come to this particular spot, so on and so forth, and wants a meeting with him. At first I was wondering, like, okay, so what are you going to get out of this? And then it's not until later on when he's coughing up blood, I'm like, okay, so that kind of goes into the point I was making last episode. I was curious, like, was the eye enough to save him? And it turns out in actuality, it's not. It doesn't mitigate any of his symptoms. I mean, at least not that we're aware of, but that's because his body is still 90% him, 10% Dong-soo, or at least 10% Connect. So it's like, right, the episode kind of later on shows like, right, he believes if he can get enough of Dong-soo, maybe he can survive. He even kind of finally explains his whole shtick about why he's doing this whole murder thing. He found out he was going to die, and so it's like, right, before his death, he wanted to kind of create beautiful death. Like I said, we don't know if he's been doing this serial killer thing way before now, and he just manifested the corpse art. They're like, oh, I want to do something beautiful, or because it's one thing to just kind of straight go into this. So he had to have lead up to it. Once again, we still don't know where that wound he had beforehand came up, but that might have just been like him trying to kill, and that might have been around the time he found out he was diagnosed, and in that moment he kind of was weary and almost got killed in an encounter with someone. Maybe not. We don't have a clear-cut answer for that. It does end up bringing up this interesting conversation later on between the both of them. So I had to look it up because I couldn't remember the specific phrasing, but it's the ship of Theseus. It's that whole thing, because this actually came up in WandaVision, was the whole thought of like, right, if this original boat ended up getting some of its swap parts, and it happens more and more till there's nothing of the original boat left, is it still the same boat or is it a different boat? You know, that ends up being a conversation, and they kind of have that. He's like, right, how much of you will become me? Or how much will we become we? Because he even has this moment earlier where he's like, right, I hate, like, he likes the familiarity of like them being together. It's like, it almost feels like we're one, but he's saying like at the same time, I hate the feeling of it, but he also enjoys it. And I think that's what really made him go, once he found out like how the Connect situation worked, and even the surgeon saying like, oh, like, replace your body parts, you might survive. I think that's what really sparked the idea for him. It's like, right, me who's on my deathbed, connected to someone who doesn't like their immortality, that's why this whole me killing people bothers him so much, because to him death is a precious thing, because as someone who lives forever, for someone who has to deal with being treated like an outsider, the monster, which is also an interesting contrast, because obviously Dong-soo has to hide himself away, which, to be fair, so does Jin Seop, but it is a situation of he's done a good job of hiding what he is, to the point he's able to live a normal life. Dong-soo not as much. He had to like deeply hide himself away. Jin Seop has to hide a part of himself and gets to pretend to have a normal life. So he's a little bit more like Erong in that way too. So it's just an interesting parallel to kind of think about. But before Dong-soo could go deal with Jin Seop, he has to deal with the guy he works for at the scrapyard. Some of the organ hunters ended up finding him because they, like, the kids that ran into Dong-soo before, pointing him in the direction. It's like, yeah, this old man, he stepped up for him, so this is probably the area he's involved in, and they kidnap him and are threatening to kill him. And so Dong-soo shows up, they try to take him out, and they were going to kill the old man, and Dong-soo fought back. And it's like, well, it's hard dealing with a guy who can heal from any wounds and stuff like that. And so he ends up cutting himself free of the chains. It like slices up his wrist. I thought he was going to go even more extreme, slice his entire hand off, free himself from the chains, and then reconnect his hand. It's like, no, only had to cut through the chains, but I don't have to worry about it slicing up my arm or my wrist, which it does, but he heals. And he fights back. And obviously the old man kind of looks at him like a monster, and it just triggers that old trauma all over again of like, oh man, I'm this monster. Those kids back then calling me that, now he's calling me that. It's like, right, he was trying to do the right thing, and no matter what, that's all anyone's ever going to see when it comes to me. And when the time comes, like, he has every right to kill the guy, but he doesn't. He still hesitates. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I think the other guy isn't dead either. They just, like, they're heavily concussed. And he could have killed the final guy, but he didn't. Because it's like, right, I'm not the monster they think I am. They want to claim I'm a monster. It's like, but I'm not that. Showing kind of like that better human nature inside of himself. Once again, he has every reason to. These people are continuing to hunt you. You have every reason to kill them, but he doesn't. And like I said, I think that speaks volumes in comparison to Iran, who seems like she has, given the opportunity, she'd slaughter each and every one of them. So that's the way I think it's such an interesting parallel between them. And that kind of gets into some stuff later on, which I'll talk about later. But when it comes to Dong-Soo frees the old man, and he's like, hey, I'm sorry, this is all my fault. I don't think I can work here anymore. Can I borrow your truck? I'm going to drop them off at the hospital, and I'll bring your truck back. And he was about to leave, but the guy was like, no, just, you go ahead, you go where you need to. You be careful, don't get caught. And for him, it was almost like so you might have called me a monster, but he kind of recognizes, like, you still save me no matter what your circumstances are. I want you to be safe. I want you to be careful. He's like, I'll clean up things here. I guess he'll take them to the hospital or even call the police. Who knows? But Dong-Soo ends up, about to leave, and then he turns around, and I love that he manifests as, like, the kid version of himself, being like, thank you so much for everything. And part of me wonders, like, has this old man been in his life ever since he was a kid, or is this like a super, super recent thing? Like, the fact is, but I guess it's like, it was almost like him being able to resolve some of that childhood trauma of someone seeing him as a monster. Because at least Irong, she accepts him for him, because it's like, right, she's like me, but for having someone who's not like him to be like, no, you're okay, it's okay, I got your back. That means a lot to him, because it's like, right, you gave me work, you kind of took me in. But that's why I'm wondering, did this old man take him in when he was a kid? The reason why it manifested specifically like that, I don't know. And maybe that also plays into why the old man's been so, because it's like, right, you've defended me twice, you've always been there for me. So I don't know. It is kind of sad that, like, for Dong-Soo, it means leaving behind what he's kind of know. It hasn't been the best, like, but it is still his life that he has to abandon, and the people around him getting drawn into all of this. At the same time, this is all going down because Iran had given him an out because the organ hunters found their way there. And obviously, Iran ain't going down without a fight. So she puts up a little bit of a fight. But the problem is there's too many of them. And so now they're asking her questions about, like, right, you've got surveillance on all of us. What's going on here? She admits that Woo Jin is dead, but I love that she's like, oh, yeah, that guy you're after, he's a corpse art killer. And he's also the one that killed Woo Jin. It was just enough to get some of them to leave to kind of open enough space for her to kind of ultimately end up escaping. The dude was Yumpio ends up slicing her face with his axe. But it ends up healing, and it's like, oh, you're a connected. Like, oh man, the things we'll be able to sell your body. Now they're just like, oh my god, like how much money we'll make. But she uses that opportunity to run and escape. But the guy's like, hey, I would think it's Mr. Kim, be like, hey, wait, just go after her discreetly. And Yumpo was like, because he was like, what do you want? So just go after her discreetly. We don't need to draw any attention, because if we find all of them, we can kind of round them up all at once. It's like, cool. So. But luckily, Irong meets up with Dong-Soo, and she actually met up with him at the scrapyard. And now, this is where things get interesting. What I was kind of talking about earlier, there are different perspectives on things, because he feels bad about all the people that kind of got dragged in. But in Yumpo, not in Yumpo, Irong is like, why are you feeling bad? The people at fault are like, you were the one that was a victim in all of this. They came after you. He's just like, right now, Z's involved. He's like, right, I wish we could have potentially connected, like, through our music. Instead, now it's like, no, that guy reached out first. It's the person that's at blame here is Jin Seop. He's the one that's at fault here. And she really starts going in on about, like, right, they hate us for being different, but we're superior to them. And like, okay, so now we're getting into that, that old bag of that new evolution of humanity of, like, right, we're the next step. We're the neo-humans in comparison to the old humans. The old humans want to make us feel like we're the freaks and we're the ones, but it's like, no, we're the superior ones. We should kind of rule this world. And even in that moment, Dong-Soo was like, wait, what? He was almost like, are you talking about world? She's like, yeah, it's like, that's kind of the better fit for this world. I'm like, yeah, but then you start entering that territory of because you start looking at yourself as superior than people. But for her, it's probably like she's probably had this thought for a while because she grew up in that same way of like, I had to hide what I am. I'm done hiding what I am. I shouldn't have to be treated as like I'm the monster. Look at you humans. There are freaks amongst you too. Like, I mean, they're after one of them, Jin Seop, a fucking serial killer. So it's not like we live our lives doing it. We're out here like being serial killers like Jin Seop, so he's more of a freak than they are. He's more of a monster than we are. That's why it cuts even deeper. Like even when that's why when Yoon Puyo ended up calling her a monster, she was like, monster? Like she's like, she was almost like, you what the fuck are you then, motherfucker? You're up here slicing up people, taking their organs. Fuck you. It had that type of stank on it when the way she was like, monster, like really? Dude, like you're gonna call me a monster when you do what you do? Like, look yourself in the mirror. Just because I'm different, I'm not out here killing people and collecting their organs. So, but Dongsu like, yeah, but all that conquest, can we really do it? The two of us? She's like, no. Who says there's just two of us? There's more than us. And it's like, wait, there's others? And it's like, yeah, you'll meet them soon enough. So I guess her thing is she's alpha, like she's kind of the recruiter. I guess she's out there to try and find any information on any other connects that might be out there. And so I wonder if she's gonna be the ringleader or is she just part of like, is there even that type of, is it a democracy? Is she the leader? Is she kind of the right hand to the leader? Or like I said, is she just the recruiter? Like what's going on is like how many people actually are, how many connects are out there? And that pharmaceutical company that's behind all this, like how and aware of all this are they? Because obviously like it seems like who they are in the dark, because I was about to say for a second like, not unless some of the people that are connects are like directly connected to the pharmaceutical company, like they are a part of it. But I'm like, no, because if she was a part of it, she wouldn't have those questions about the pharmaceutical company. So I'm like, so she is an outsider with all this. I'm assuming they all are, but we don't know how many there are. There could be a few dozen, could be less than, could be, less than a dozen. Like we don't know. I'm curious to see what ends up happening on that front. But they both go their separate ways to kind of deal with their situations. She went to deal with something I thought was going to be the organ hunters, but it turns out no. She went somewhere, and I'm curious if that's her meeting up with the other connects. She does have a tracker on Dongsu's phone, so she notices that, why is he moving so, it's like 87 kilometers per, like, no, why is he moving that fast all of a sudden? Is he in a car? Because sadly, when he met up with Jin Seop, he ended up getting, kidnapped because Jin Seop set up the place to like, it's like, right, I can't kill you and like, I don't want to take the chance that if we go into a physical struggle, you'll probably outmatch me. Plus nothing I could do could fully stop you. So he gasses him and it's like, right, the gas is just, and it keeps him in a perpetual state of dying because he'll eventually resuscitate after a while and even Jin Seop sees it. It's like, right. So it only took seconds for his heart to stop and then start again and he's back alive. But I think the gas being perpetual use kind of like kills him all over again. So I guess as long as you can kind of keep him drugged and kind of keep it in, well, not even drugged, like I said, I don't think it's even knocking him out. I think it is straight up killing him. But it's like, right, by keeping that, his system kind of flooded with that, it just keeps him in, like, dying and coming back to life over and over and over again. And Jin Seop, it's like, him have that whole conversation about, what he wants and what he's aiming for. It's like, right, why drag other people into your whole thing? He talks about, like, right, killing was the only thing that he wasn't bored of in this world anymore, just like you're bored of your immortality. So the last thing we see, though, is him, I think that had to be the surgeon, maybe it was someone else, the person whose body he's got hung up in a very, like, suspended means. I was like, it looked like it was gray hair, so I'm like, is that the surgeon? I mean, he did go through the trouble of killing him, so he probably has his body on display like that. I'm just curious to see what happens on that front. And obviously, Dongsu's in a very compromised position. It's like, yeah, this guy has control of you. He's going to slice you up and take body parts of yours until, like, till he becomes you, you become him, we become we, which I didn't say it at the time, but that's some like very Venom shit. We are Venom. Either way, so there's that. There's also the element of the cops. They end up finding Woo Jin's body and like a camera. The camera has all these pictures of Jin Seop, which obviously makes sense because it's like, oh, we're keeping an eye on the guy who, I mean, even Jin Seop was like, oh yeah, I thought you were just doing that just to keep an eye on the surgery and stuff. But it's like, no, it's because of this Connect stuff. It's why you were really keeping an eye on me. But they end up looking at the timestamps. A lot of it coincides with some of the murders. And I'm like, wait, so how, what? Like, does he actually secretly have a partner in this or something? Or is he just taking credit for it? What's going on there? But then also, like, am I like, are the cops interpreting it like, oh, he does these killings and then he displays the bodies dead? Because it's like, these could be set up well, but no, because like someone would find him. Like, how does he get these bodies displayed up with no one seeing him? Because, I mean, at least like the most recent body wasn't in a public enough place. The others were, because the last body was at, like, basically out in a field. So that's why I'm like, I don't know what to make of that. They're public enough that it's like, it's hard to like be able to do something. I mean, I guess the argument, it's like, right, you look at something like Hannibal, how a lot of that shit ended up happening, because I made comparisons in the first episode that some of these Jin Seop's murders as like very similar to like some of the stuff you saw in the Hannibal show. So that's a lot to kind of keep in mind going into the finale, because it's like, what is that all about then? How, I don't know. And then what he also kind of was like, oh, I never went to call them like corpse art or whatever. So it's like, it's not like he's denying they're his. And we've also seen he has killed people. So I'm like, what is that then? Like I said, does he actually have a partner? Is someone else doing the corpse art and he's just taking credit for it? Is there kind of a behind the scene partner, or what's going on that front? Obviously, will Dong-soo actually get his right eye back? Will he actually end up killing Jin Seop? How will he find himself way out of this situation? We'll ultimately have to wait to see what I believe. I mean, it's the last episode, but I don't know if it's like a finale or whether it's a season finale. We'll ultimately have to wait and see how it all plays out. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.